All right, that's day 3 with Teenage Engineering EP-1320 Medieval. All in all, I'm starting to like this thing. I'm getting the hang of it. It's very interesting. I think after today, I'm going to take some time and get to learn the more in-depth parts of this machine, because initially I wanted to make a sampling video today and test out the sampling, and I did test out the sampling a little bit. Like, I made a little beat with one of the samples that comes into it. I learned how to sync the BPM and everything like that. But when I went to pull in my own samples, I gotta say it's a little bit clunky. And the reason it feels so clunky is just because you have to hold down a pad while you sample. And then when I was trying to use the chop functions, I did what it says. I held down Altero and then hit the sample button twice. And that's supposed to allow you to chop them up how you see fit or use the auto chop. And it just kept doing weird things, like not allowing me the amount of chops that I wanted with the auto chop. Like, one of the chops, it was only allowing me 2 chops no matter what I did. And it was like a 6-second sample that I pulled in. And it was making the first of the chops 5 seconds and the other one was 1 second. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get it not to do that. So I deleted that sample. I pulled in a whole different sample. And then that one would give me the option for 8 chops. But I wanted to use all 12 pads for it. And again, I couldn't figure out how to do it right. Obviously, it could be just my failing. But also, it's just a pretty clunky workflow compared to what I'm used to. What I do like are the punch effects, or the punch pocus, as you call it on this machine. They're fun to work with. It kind of reminds me of Koala Sampler, which this machine kind of feels like, an old version of Koala Sampler. It's like Koala Sampler if you don't like using apps. That's basically what this thing is. It's a lot of fun. Reminds me of last year when I almost cut this finger off and couldn't play guitar or bass. And I picked up a 1010 Music black box and started using Koala Sampler, and then using Koala effects and just doing live, like DJing type of stuff. Like, which, if you watch the channel, usually I tend to write songs, or I'll write beats that are a little more intricate with guitar and bass and stuff like that. But it is fun just to use a different creative process. Now, one thing that I'll notice from the comments, the pads actually do smell like chocolate. The first day with it, someone asked in one of the comments, and I said no, they don't. I wish they did, but my head was close to it yesterday, and I smelled it, and I was like, wait, that does kind of smell like chocolate. And then I asked my wife, and she smelled it, and she's like, yeah, they do. So, I thought maybe it could be just me wanting it to, but my wife has no investment in this machine, and she said that the pads smell like chocolate. I don't know how or why they did it, but very interesting. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Oh yeah, just getting the hang of assigning the fader to different things is awesome as well. And using the amplitude and the pitch with your samples. So I'm completely over the built-in samples to this thing. They're quirky sounding, and there's some of them that I might use, like maybe I'll use a hurdy-gurdy or some of the flutes. But what I did is I have like the old MPC 4000 sound library. So I loaded it up with a bunch of the MPC 4000 sounds and stuff like that. And just got it loaded up with a bunch of different stuff. So that's working pretty well. But yeah, the built-in sounds, I wish you could get rid of them, because they're just taking up a bunch of space that I could use for my huge sample library. But all in all, I have been having fun with this thing. And I guess it's been 3 days, so I can kind of make a recommendation. Now, in yesterday's video, I mentioned a lot of my friends have seen me posting with this on Instagram, and they're asking me about it. And that I mentioned to them that you should just hold on. I invited a couple of them to come over, so they're gonna come over, and I'm gonna play through this thing and the MPC One and Koala Sampler and Beatmaker 3, just so they can make decisions. But I gotta say, if you have experience with samplers and with this type of sampling, like the old school version of sampling, I kind of recommend this, but I would actually recommend just the regular KO too, because they have basically the same functionality. But you know, the hype about double the space in this thing, the storage space in this thing, it's, you can't delete any of the samples. Like I know on the KO2, the samples that came with it, you could delete them, and a lot of people did. You can't do that on this. So essentially you have the same amount of sampling space. Now I do like this colorway, like it's just different. I like things that are gold, and like the brown and orange is kind of cool. But what I hate is how everything's named. Like Tempest and Manus and Sonus and Demus and Quantum's fine, that's easy. Pocus, Arado, like it just gets really annoying when you're trying to learn a piece of gear. And they leaned really heavily into that for this device. So if you're like a collector and you don't really make music that often, you don't plan on making that much music with this thing really, I get how it could be fun for a collector, but for me, like, I mean, I'm just trying to learn it, make music with it, and it hasn't completely taken me out of being able to learn it, but it has created some extra hurdles. The other thing that I'll complain about is the instructions, and I'm not talking about the instructions that come with it, because those basically did nothing for me. So I've been using the instructions on my phone, just picking up the actual manual. And what I noticed is, okay, so if you can see this, if I can get it to focus, see how there's actual button combinations here? And that's great, right? That helps you to learn it. But then there are other instances where they don't give you any button combinations. So I'm going to try to find one of those instances here so I can show you how utterly useless this is when they don't show you the button combinations that you need to press. Now, I might not be able to find it quick enough to not make this video super long. But yeah, last night I was actually trying to do something, and I wish I had made a note of it so I could go directly to what I'm talking about, but it was in the middle of the night. I was up playing with this thing until like midnight because I've been really trying to learn it, because the more about it I learn, the more fun that I can have. But also, there's some glitches that I've been encountering, which is really annoying. But actually, while I was making that jam that I did in this video, so your punch in Pocus, you can press any of these keys, right? Let's see if it happens now. So, playing the song, I'm gonna hit Pocus, solo this. Now when yep, it's giving me an error. You see that? It gave me an error. So that was when I soloed one of the sequences or groups they're called, and then I held down Pocus and pressed the 1 for that effect. Now that is like a kind of chop effect, I think, and it was working for me before. Now it's just giving me this error, and this is the 4th time that this has happened. I had to restart the jam video. When I restart it, it'll work again. Back to my song. Now watch, it's gonna happen again. Pocus, I'm gonna solo the drums, and here's the 1. It worked. Okay. So I guess 5th time was the charm. But yeah, that's a glitch that I've encountered. And that was a pretty annoying one, because right in the middle of recording a video, I got that glitch. I found a video that was made for the KO2 that showed me a bunch of cool stuff. Like if you noticed in this video, I was actually typing in numbers to find the sample that I wanted. Well, you can also do that with a bunch of other functions in the menu. Like you can change the scale that the pads are in. Like I believe mine's in a minor scale. I think I typed it in. It was like 320 or something when you go to the pad settings. But, you know, Teenage Engineering doesn't tell you that stuff. As far as I could find, and there's a bunch of other stuff they don't tell you, which I think is ridiculous when you make something that requires the use of button combinations as much as this, and then they just neglect to tell you so many things. I think that's pretty ridiculous. I know there's like some teenage engineering fans out there, which I am a fan of this, but like I don't believe in just glazing people. You know, like I love Gibson guitars, but I will say that my SG never stayed in tune, and that's why I don't have it anymore. My Les Paul stays in tune better, but it doesn't stay in tune as good as the Orville by Gibson Les Paul that I used to have, which is the Japanese-made one that Gibson contracted them to make. So I think that that's ridiculous on Gibson that they haven't made guitars that stay in tune after as long as they've been in business. And I think it's fair to say similar things about companies like Teenage Engineering, the MPC One Plus, which I love. You guys who've watched the channel over the past year, you know that I had some complaints about that thing too, even though I think it's phenomenal for the price you pay and everything that it can do. It's important to criticize and you know, the last criticism that I'll come back to is just the fact that I can't take those stupid medieval samples off. Like, you know, there's probably like 10 of them that I'll use, but it's taking up the space of like 250 samples in this thing, and I'm probably never going to use those. So yeah, Teenage Engineering, you're probably not watching this, but if you are, like, release a patch, a firmware update, and let us get rid of all that junk, because it's just taking up a bunch of extra space. Thank you for watching. Peace.